morning, everyone, and welcome back to DRC Mining Week's year-end celebration. This is the start of day 2, and we are happy to welcome our panel today for a session titled Putting the E of ESG at the Center of Attention. The session is sponsored by BEREC. Now, before we get into the heart of the discussion and I introduce you to our moderator, I'd like to run you through a couple of minor housekeeping rules. Firstly, this session is interactive and we want to hear from you. So please don't hesitate and share your questions in the chat box that you'll find on the right-hand side of your screen. Lastly, if you have any difficulty navigating the platform, you'll find a help desk button on top of your screen that will lead you to our technical team. Without further ado, let's kick off this discussion and let me introduce you to our moderator for the day, Alfonso Tejerina. He is the Executive Director for Global Business Reports, and he will be leading the discussion and introducing our panel. Alfonso, welcome. Thanks for joining us. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Sabrina. Bonjour. Good day, everyone. Welcome to this session by the DRC Mining Week Year-End Festival. Thanks to the VUCA Group for the invitation. My name is Alfonso Tejerina. Sabrina mentioned I'm Director and General Manager of Global Business Reports. You can see in this little slide there, this is some of our latest publications. Just a few words about my company. We are an international publishing house. So we're celebrating 20 years in the market, and we produce extensive reports across multiple jurisdictions worldwide and in several industries, mining being one of the core topics we cover. In this slide, you can see some of our latest editions in Africa, which are part of the Mining in Africa Country Investment Guide series, also known as MASIC. You can go to gbreports.com to read all of our editions, and also in the info about this session, you will have a direct link to our latest report on Southern Africa, where we study the latest developments on South Africa and Namibia's mining industries. So let's move into the session now. The title is Putting the E of ESG at the Center of Attention. As you all know, the ESG acronym has become a very important term for mining companies and companies in the extractive industries in general. And I'm very, very happy to moderate this panel as we have some high-level experts that I'm going to introduce right now. So first, we have two representatives from Kamoa Copper, the DRC entity operating the Kamoa-Kakula copper mine. First, we have Annick Walsdorff, who is the environmental manager at Kamoa Copper. Annick has a master's degree in chemical engineering from the Université Libre in Brussels, Belgium, and a master's degree in environmental engineering from Stellenbosch University in South Africa. Prior to joining Kamoa Copper this year, she worked for Golder, the international consultants, and also she was principal environmental consultant for 11 years at the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, the CSIR, in South Africa. Together with Annick from Ivanhoe, we have Dr. Guy Muswil, who is Executive Head of Sustainability at Ivanhoe Mines. Guy has been with the group for 11 years now, including 10 years at Ivanplats, and also he was Community Relations and HSC Manager for African Minerals, the predecessor company of Kamoa Copper. Guy is a medical doctor by background, and then he's become a specialist on CSR and community relations issues. And also with us today, coming from, she's from Norway, is Bodil Furu. She represents Kipay, a private power producer focused on renewable energies in the DRC. Bodil is actually a filmmaker with experience as a creative arts professor in different institutions in Norway. And for the last 4 years, she has been in charge of environmental and social governance at Kipay, based in Lubumbashi. We will dive into the details during the session, but Kipay is developing the Somwe hydropower project north of Kolwezi, a plant that will have 166 megawatts of installed capacity. So before we start with the questions, I would like the different panelists to perhaps have an opening word. So I don't know, Annick, if you would like to start a few words about your role at Kamoa Copper and what's going on at Kamoa Kakula at the moment.
Sure. Thank you, Alfonso. Good morning, everyone. So the Kamoa Kakula copper project is a joint venture between Ivanhoe Mines, Zijin Mining Group, and the government of the Democratic Republic of Congo, and has been independently ranked as the world's largest and developed high-grade copper discovery. It's a very large near-surface copper deposit and is approximately 25 kilometers west of the mining center of Kolwezi. Kamoa is planning to become the second biggest copper producer in the world within the next 5 years. But we're all aware of how mining activities can affect the environment directly or indirectly and throughout the life of the mine, may it be during exploration, construction, or operation. So it is clear that in modern mining operations, steps should be taken to avoid or minimize adverse impacts. Kamoa Copper is committed to contributing towards a better world by fostering prosperity through building and responsibly operating mines in thriving communities and ecosystems.
Well, thank you very much, Annick. Bodil, I don't know if you would like to tell us a bit more about Kipay and just have an opening word before we dive into the questions.
Sure. Thank you very much for being invited to take part. Kipay Energy is a Congolese company established in 2015 as a result of the liberalization of the energy code in Congo. And we are in the beginning of, we are still in development and busy with doing studies and establishing all our plans. I think I will come back to what we are doing in some of your questions.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you very much. So I start with an open question to all of you, which is related to the general environmental trends. Obviously, we've seen in the news the recent COP26 or the United Nations Climate Conference in Glasgow. One of the conclusions is that the world needs to reduce fossil fuel power sources, most notably coal, and basically reduce carbon emissions overall. Now, how is the mining industry adopting greener practices to be aligned with global targets? I mean, what are the key steps that need to be taken in that direction? Annick?
Yes. So a mining operation can avoid or minimize adverse impacts of its activities on the immediate environment by carefully pre-planning projects, first of all, undertaking alternative assessment, identifying financing solutions, formulating mine plans, designing adequate water, waste management, implementing pollution control, etc. For us, it's extremely important, in addition to complying with those statutory requirements, to also focus on using environmental and social performance and international best practice standards, including those related to the ESG performance to manage these key areas. So this is essentially one social license to mine. Kamoa Copper is committed to align to the UN Sustainability Development Goals. So Kamoa is committed to produce a green copper. So our strategy is basically underpinned by 4 pillars: greenhouse gas emission, water management, biodiversity management, and waste management. We are already powered with clean, sustainable hydroelectricity from the Mwadingusha hydropower plant. In addition, the disposal of tailings being one of the main environmental impacts, Kamoa will pump approximately 55% of its tailings mixed with cement back underground during backfilling operation. So that's also going to significantly reduce tailings footprint and go forward to a greener approach. Water management. In our case, Kakula Kamoa project has a net positive water balance and is continually mitigating the risk of flooding to safeguard the development. So we do focus on recycling of tailings water to the process plant and also adequate management of mine water discharge. And then lastly, we have a proactive system in place to implement the biodiversity mitigation hierarchy. where best practice mitigation measures are relied upon in case of unavoidable environmental impact. So we have implemented our environmental policy, biodiversity action plan, and any relevant site-specific environmental and social management plan. So we're comfortable in stating that our business model and mining operations are inherently sustainable and really going towards decreasing greenhouse gas emission and in line with climate change.
Mm-hmm. And how would you say, Annick, how would you say the operational models, the business has changed? I mean, you have a long experience in different consultancies in the mining sector. How have you seen business models change, the way that the mining operations are designed over the last 15, 20 years?
I would say that the main change that I have seen is the compliance and trying to incorporate environmental, social, and performance and international best practices instead of just relying on your local statutory requirements.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So doing a bit more than the law requires, right?
Yes, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Bodil, let's talk about Kipay. One of your company's missions is to address the power shortage in the Democratic Republic of Congo. I mean, I saw some estimates that just in the Katanga region, the supply-demand deficit is around 1,000 megawatts. What do you think is the role of renewables in order to bridge that gap in the DRC?
I think that's the that's the energy for the future, renewable energy, and that's also the contribution of Kipay. It's a huge deficit in Katanga, but we also have to think about that only 15% of the population in Congo can access electricity or power, and that means that there is a huge there's another energy source in Congo that's people are using, and that's charcoal. And I think that's also something the industry should look into to reduce the use of makala, as you say, in Congo. And you see lots of international projects, reducing the use of makala in Congo, like clean cooking projects. And I think that's also something the industry can also take part in.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Could you tell us a bit more about the projects where Kipay is active at the moment?
Yeah, the Samba project is in the very north of Katanga. It's sort of like a forgotten part of all Katanga. It's called Mitwaba. It's, as you said, it's estimating to produce 160 megawatt hydropower. And we are like, even before we started construction, we started with social projects in one of the impacted villages. So CSR or local social projects is at the core of Kipay's mission. So we have started with some projects to boost agriculture, and we are looking into agroforestry projects and also forest restoration projects that we are focusing on.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
Okay, excellent. And in terms of the hydropower in particular, can you give us some details about the environmental aspects that need to be taken into consideration when developing a medium-sized hydropower project like somewhere?
Yeah, of course, there are impacts from hydropower, and we can't sort of hide that fact. And Kipay is going to do all the mitigation measure in line with international standards, and that will be clear in our management plan. And also for the biodiversity action plan we are coming up with, and also a social action plan, which is in line with, of course, Congolese law, which is the most important law to follow, but also international practices like the IFC standards, which is what we are benching.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Next question for Annick. We've seen some mining companies like Barrick. I don't know about Ivanhoe, but you can tell me more. That they are trying or they're committing to get to net zero emissions by 2050. how can that be put into practice? I mean, what are the steps that need to be taken in that direction to get to a point where an operation is carbon neutral?
Thank you, Alfonso. So essentially, our climate change strategy is supported by 4 broad areas. So we're looking at low emissions technology, we're looking at portfolio positioning, we're looking at reporting pathways, and then stakeholder resilience. And in terms of low emissions technology, we focusing on the hydropower and also looking at alternative, such as powering our mines primarily with electricity generated from the hydropower, but also for automated and electrical vehicles. So what Kamoa has done is Kamoa has entered into a financing agreement with the DRC state-owned power company, the SNEL, in connection with the joint rehabilitation of the Mwadingusha hydropower plant. 5 of the 6 turbines have been revamped to produce 78 megawatt of hydropower. And Kamoa has recently extended that existing financing agreement with SNEL to facilitate the upgrade of turbine number 5 at the Inga 2 hydropower complex on the Congo River. So that turbine 5 will produce an additional 162 megawatts of renewable hydropower, and combined with the 78 megawatt from Mwadingusha facility, that will essentially be sufficient for Kamoa Kakula having access to a 240 megawatt of clean renewable electricity. That will be sufficient to provide the entire copper complex, concentrator, and the smelter, which is planned to be built with sustainable electricity. So for all phase 3 and future expansions. So that can also essentially assist with or benefit local communities through the various community projects and livelihood projects that Kamoa has put in place. And then to achieve that company's net zero commitment in terms of and scope 2, we will then also, as I mentioned previously, evaluate the potential for electrifying the project's mining fleet with new equipment. So that's essentially what we are focusing on in terms of low emissions technology. In terms of portfolio positioning, Kamoa understands that responsible mining can play a key role in supplying metals which are critical to help meet the challenges caused by climate change, and one of those metals being copper, which is essential for the new generation of environmental friendly vehicles, for example, and for other renewable equipment or renewable energy. In terms of reporting pathways, we also believe that taking a proactive approach in reporting on our climate change related activities, that this will give and build a culture of energy efficiency and climate change resilience awareness amongst the workforce, that will assist the company towards that goal. And then finally, in terms of stakeholder resilience, which is the 4th area in which we are committing to work in, is to ensure that the climate change related events that are potentially impacting the people residing as part of our host communities are acknowledged and assisted as they come on stream. So this is essentially our process and strategy in terms of achieving the net zero emissions that the company has been committing to.
Mm-hmm. Excellent, thank you, Annick. A question for Kipay, for Bodil. Now, we have seen a proliferation of different standards for sustainability reports in the extractive industries. Do you think having these multiple standards is a problem? Or how do you see this evolving in the future?
Energy sector in DRC see the best. I can't speak on behalf of the mining sector, but I see there's like lots of standards to follow, and it's sort of like at the first glimpse you can see desert jungle. So I think also the companies must spend some time to understand what standards to follow, and also not you don't need to sort of like follow it like if you follow it at the end you will spend too much of your budget on it. But also like what we are working on is also to Congo has signed lots of international convention that we also need to pay attention to, and then also to what we see also is like human right assessments is also getting more and more important in energy hydropower sector, that you also need to assign to. And I think it's super important for all the industry to focus on it and dedicate time and budget for it, and make a plan and make sure you have a budget to follow it. Another aspect of for Kipay is that to follow all international standards and to do your field studies, there is a huge gap in baseline data in DRC, which is also all over sub-Saharan Africa. We don't find the good studies, so you have to do it yourself, and this is also to allocate time in the project to realize that if you want to follow international standards, you need also to contribute to baseline data in the country, and this is something we are paying attention to, and it also sort of delays the progress in the projects, because you can't do studies all at once. You have to consider dry season, rainy season. So this is the reality of Kipay, that we are facing also to match the international standards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for that. Now, Kamoa is known for producing, clean copper. There's a number of elements that come into place. Now, of course, we saw recently a study by Volvo that shows how electric vehicles need more materials than conventional cars, and therefore, at least at the beginning, they have a higher carbon footprint at the manufacturing stage. Obviously, that is compensated with the use of electricity instead of fossil fuels afterwards. But in this respect, as we are moving towards the electrification of transport, what is the role of making that copper that goes into electric cars cleaner to reduce the carbon footprint at the mining production? And I like to talk particularly at the high grade component of Kamoa-Kakula's deposit, but also the use of clean energy. So Annick, I don't know if you could comment on that.
Sorry, Alfonso, the line was very bad. Can you perhaps repeat your question?
Oh, sure. Perhaps the question was a bit too long. Now, I was saying that with the electrification of transport and the fact that these electric vehicles will need more copper, more aluminium, more metals in general, what's the role of the mining industry to reduce the carbon footprint in the production of those metals? And in particular, I'd like you to comment on the green characteristics of Kamoa-Kakula's copper in terms of the high grade, in terms of the use of hydropower, strip ratio, etc., that makes it more efficient in terms of carbon emissions than other copper operations in the world. Hello? I think we're losing the connection there. Okay. Hi, Annick, can you hear us?
Yes, sorry, my apologies. essentially, due to the very high grade copper that the deposit, the Kamoa deposit has, the unit cost of copper per ton copper is lower and will permit to be able to produce more at a lower cost. So we'll need to do a business case in terms of assessing and evaluating the potential to use electrical fleet within the mine.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Bodil, a question from the audience that perhaps you could take. Someone is asking, is there a drive in the DRC for independent power producers? And how do you think, there's space for mining companies to produce their own solar power like in South Africa?
For the mining companies, you mean?
Yes, or in general.
Yeah. No, but the private energy sector in Congo is pretty young. It's after the mining energy code in 2014. You see several companies, companies starting their development of also solar energy projects. And it also, as we know, hydropower development takes time. It's like an enormously high investment, but also the construction takes time, and all the studies and feasibility studies, it takes time to get it there. But also Kipay is also planning like a solar power farm in Fungurume. The power from the Samba hydropower project will be connected to the national grid in Fungurume. And part of the project is also a solar panel farm, solar energy farm. So yes, there is a drive. There is institutions working for this to facilitate also for the industry to be able to develop their projects, also hydropower project as well as solar energy projects. And we see also in Congo there is it's a big discussion and concerns about this. So there is institutions that will facilitate and help sort of independent power producers.
Mm-hmm. And what is the funding environment in the DRC for independent power producers or private producers, to be able to raise the capital needed in order to develop these power projects that the country needs? I mean, is it very challenging? Do you engage with government, with non-government institutions? I mean, where do you find where do you raise the money, and how difficult is it to raise the money for these power projects?
It is a willingness from governmental institutions. They're welcoming like investors to invest in renewable energy projects in Congo. As said, we're still in the beginning, and these projects are under development. But there are sort of governmental institutions and that facilitating investors also from abroad to come into the Congo and invest. So there is sort of some mechanisms put in place already.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Okay, another question about Kamoa Kakula now for Annick and Guy. Someone in the audience is asking about what is going to be the upcoming investments or the upcoming electrical or power infrastructure that you will need as Kamoa Kakula grows and moves into phase 2, phase 3. How is the power aspect going to be managed as the mine grows?
Thank you. If I can jump in to answer that question. So as Annick has explained to you, for that turbine rehabilitation from Inga 2, it's mostly to work on the the turbine itself at Inga in the Bas-Congo. But you need to know that in Congo, there's a power line existing already between the east and the west, and it's an existing corridor that will be used to feed the electricity from the west, and that can be collected at the east. So we don't need any additional infrastructure on that line because it's in already. But for the on-site infrastructure, we'll probably need to set up additional substation. We have a big substation which is existing already that supports the 78 mega that we already have on site and that we use for the concentrator and all the existing mining infrastructure. That's basically what we're going to have to set up, and there's no major investment apart that is being to put in at Inga site.
Okay, thank you for that. Another question relating the mining industry side of things is, transparency, supply chain integrity. This is very important for mining companies to control not just what they are directly in charge of, but also all the supply chain that comes into a big operation like Kivali or Kamoa Kakula. Annick or Guy, I don't know if you could take this one. What can be done to support greener practices throughout the mining supply chain? What standards or what procedures can you implement in order to support your providers, but also make sure they comply with the standards that you need?
Thank you, Alfonso. So we believe that organizations should adopt environmental requirements as part of their contractor management and procurement processes. And that's what Kamoa has embarked upon, is to ensure that any environmental sustainability requirements, as a matter of fact, is being included into the contractor management and procurement processes. So using both a contractual means as well as their leverage over suppliers in order to ensure that suppliers adopt those green practices and that those are aligned with the organization's vision. We also believe that organizations should give effect to the duty of care principles by conducting audits, inspections, whether it's with one of your suppliers, equipment suppliers, or chemicals, reagent suppliers, or any landfill site, for example, to ensure that they are adhering to the organization's environmental policies and management plans. So it's both sides. It's the contractors management side of it, and then the audits and inspection.
Maybe if I can add on what Annick has said, that it's on top of that due diligence on strategic and high risk supplier and the upstream or downstream, including as far as possible on-site sustainability assessment needs to be done. And finally, the organization should effectively be issuing a corrective action report with a predetermined timeline for implementation of any non-compliance findings and issuing the closure of those corrective action plans. So terminating business relationship with suppliers who repeatedly fail to implement corrective actions need to be considered seriously if we want that to be effective.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. And how do you think contractors in Africa or in the DRC in particular have improved over the last 5-10 years in order to adhere to the compliance required by mining companies?
Look, if I compare 5 years back, I can see that there's quite a significant improvement, and people are more and more, organizations are more understanding the need of being aligned with the company requirements, because there's at the end it's a business, and there's a risk of losing that business if they don't comply. We have seen some resistance in the beginning, but now people are start understanding, and more with all the implementation of all the auditors, inspectors is trying to give a good trend on in terms of behaving and following the ESG principle.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Guy. And I have another question for Annick now, which is related to the waste management aspect of Kamoa Kakula. You've mentioned before about the tailings, how you're mixing the tailings with cement, use that as backfill for the underground infrastructure or for the underground mine. Could you tell us a bit more about how this is becoming commonplace in the mining industry and how that helps optimize not just the use of water, the use of the recycling of the materials, but also reduce the geographical footprint of the mine, which in turn helps biodiversity, it helps with the community. I don't know if we could talk about that, because I think that's a very interesting aspect from Kamoa Kakula.
Sorry, so we only got half of the question, but essentially you would like to understand better how the backfilling operations would assist in minimizing the tailings footprint and,
yes,
and assisting with biodiversity management.
Yeah.
Yes. So essentially, so 55% of the tailings which is being produced at Kamoa is recycled back into the mine underground, mixed with cement or sand, or sand, and is backfilled into the underground mine. So, your footprint of the tailings facility will basically be half of what it would have been if there would have been no recycling. In addition to that, we also recycle the water from the tailings facilities to make sure that we have a higher density tailings left into the dam. Yes, not sure if there was some additional question.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Thank you very much. And in terms of the regulation, I mean, we've mentioned how mining companies typically they apply their own standards, no matter which country they are. But of course, there's the regulation aspect that needs to be considered as well. In terms of the parts per million that you can emit, in terms of other aspects. In the DRC in particular, and this is a question for all of you, how is the environmental regulation when it comes to the mining projects or to the energy projects? Is there any particular things that make it more difficult or that you need to take special care in the DRC? Bodil, perhaps you can start with this one.
As far as I understand, the national regulations is sort of in line with also international standards like performance standards. So far, it's not a big sort of, they're not so far away from each other. But it's also to advocate for like stronger authorities, like maybe to improve the regulators in DRC. DRC just got like a regulator for the energy sector, and it's still in the beginning. Since 1 or 2 years, we have this regulator for the energy sector, and I think this relation also that the energy sector work very closely with the regulator to put in place procedures for how to follow up and apply and implement all the regulations that's the national regulations. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Annick, on the mining front, what's your experience working on the DRC regulations in particular?
So we're trying to combine the DRC regulations with the international standards. There are some gaps in some of the DRC regulations that we found, and in that case, we are basically complementing or supplementing with international standards. We do comply with the mining regulations in terms both the environmental impact assessments review, and it needs to be revised every 5 years, or when there is a major change in your activities that may impact the environment further, or that hasn't been taken into consideration in your previous environmental impact assessment, for example. So there's also a requirement for a 2-yearly audit in terms of the DRC regulations at the mine, an independent audit. So yeah, that's basically our experience in terms of.
Yeah, maybe to add on what Annick just said is, I can pick up one of the particular things that I was observing into the DRC regulation is what is called the industrial liability, mostly in terms of impact. When you're working on a sequence, footprint, when you have 2 operations with different minings, and that's impacting the same environment. Let's say it's a river or things like that. And so the industrial reliability say that in all the consequences downstream that is happening, it's on the responsibility of the mining unless it's proven that they are not further to be taken responsible thereof. So it means that if you have a regular monitoring system to check over time, all the time, what your impact or what's the quality of what you're putting into the environment is, then you can probably take that you're not responsible for. But what's happened if upstream to you there's a mining company that doesn't take care, then both of you in a very bad boat, and it will be very difficult to prove that either is the number 1 or the number 2 company who's responsible for that. So it makes quite complex situation that probably is one of the difficult of the companies are seen when operating on SERI. So this is kind of thing that may happen or is actually happening, and that was based on the reviewed mining codes, which I confirm that there's a lot of great and good thing, but still need to be clarified on, the liability level. That's what I can add.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And moving towards the conclusion now, I mean, you've been working on the DRC for some time, all of you. How do you think the investor community perceives the DRC? How is it improving its profile in front of international investors, with Kamoa Kakula in particular, with the new developments on the energy front? There's definitely a story behind, the need for copper, the electrification of the economies, so the combination of copper production, hydropower. So I don't know if we could conclude with a final comment on the attractiveness of the DRC for mining and energy projects. I mean, Bodil, I don't know, what's your perspective on things?
No, but we can sense in the energy sector, you can sense there is an investor's interest in DRC. As said, the private energy sector is still young in Congo, and it takes some time to establish the procedures in the country. But there is an interest for investing in energy projects in Congo, and they are very welcomed by governmental organizations and interest organizations, and the business association is also welcoming sort of investors to the Congo to invest in hydropower developments. But also said, like, ESG is also an important part of any hydropower development, and it's being more and more required for investors, that they don't want to jump in before you have put that in place and you have your ESIA in order and you have all your studies and mitigation measures in line with the international standards. And that's also that I can sense a huge discussion, also an awareness in the sector that is getting more and more discussed, and energy companies are paying more and more attention to it, and especially before and after COP26, you can it's been really discussed, and I hope that can help also to really raise the level also inside the country also for environmental and social impact assessments for the energy sector, which is developing.
No, thank you very much, Annick and Gia. And obviously, Kamoa Kakula is the poster child of this development in front of the international mining community, one of the largest copper mines in the world, successfully being built and in operation in the DRC. Would you have a final comment about how the DRC is seen in a different light nowadays, partly thanks to Kamoa Kakula?
Well, what I can say is the copper itself is it's a very important commodity now, and then it's making attraction of many investors just because of its implication on the or the transition energy that everybody has agreed that we need to get in. And specifically for the Kamoa Kakula project, you know that it's an incredible deposit that just because of how it is, the investment cost is very low. So obviously we have a lot of people, a lot of investors interested in that project. But you all know that how difficult it is to invest into DRC, and in this fragile political and economic situation, you need to be very prepared to invest in such condition. But we know many of the investors have already learned from decades how to invest into DRC, and they're keen to come and get the investment in. We're receiving many demand for investors for visits and due diligence to understand how it works, and I'm pretty sure that most of them are convinced that it's a good place to invest.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for your time. I would like to ask you to have a final message from either Kipay, and Ivanhoe, if you would like to just have a final statement to finish this session. Bodil?
Thank you. Yeah, a part of sort of like this is about ESG, putting the E in the middle, and Kipay also believes that fighting poverty is also an important aspect to protect biodiversity and fight the climate change. And part of the energy that the Samba hydropower project will produce will be given to local communities in our project area, and we believe also to give rural communities access to clean energy and to develop them can also is also an important contribution to a protection of environment.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Bodil. Annick, Guy, I don't know if you'd like to have a final message to conclude the session.
Yes, thank you. So, by adopting a comprehensive sustainability management system and by providing disclosures across a number of those ESG metrics, we believe that Kamoa can demonstrate commitment to sustainable development, or any other organizations should be on board as well and progress in respect to their sustainability objectives. So it's very important for us to increase disclosure. It promotes greater transparency and accountability, and essentially sustainability and ESG is a journey. We believe that as long as organizations show commitment and progress, investors will also be on board.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, everyone. It's been a very interesting session. We've discussed the implications of the mining developments in the DRC in what regards the environment, the use of clean energy, the innovative ways of disposing tailings or recycling the tailings at Kamoa Kakula in particular. So there's some very nice conclusions from this session. I'd like to close it here. I'll pass it over to Sabrina from VUCA Group. My name is Alfonso Tejerina from Global Business Reports. It was a pleasure moderating this panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Alfonso. Thank you to all our speakers. It's been a very interesting session. And to our audience, thank you so much as well for your engagement. I'd like to give another thanks to our sponsor, Barrick, whose page you can visit on the event platform on the page Meet Your Community. Now we are taking a short break and we will be back at 12 GMT with our next session on technologies sponsored by Telesol. So we'll see you there. In the meantime, you can network, go visit our exhibitors and have your meetings if you wish to. Thank you.